Every 11 seconds, an older adult is rushed to the emergency room because of a fall. Every 19 minutes, one of them dies as a result of those injuries. The statistics are alarming, but what's even more concerning is what most doctors, family members, and the elderly themselves don't know: the true reasons why these falls occur. For years, we've been told that falls are simply the inevitable result of aging. Reflexes slow down. Balance naturally deteriorates. It's just part of getting older. But these superficial explanations hide a much more complex reality that, in many cases, is treatable. In this video, we're going to reveal the real reasons why elderly people fall, beyond the simplistic explanations we usually hear. You'll discover the hidden mechanisms at play, long before the first fall occurs, the early warning signs that almost everyone misses, and most importantly, the steps you can take right now to prevent a tragedy. Stay until the end, because in the last part, we'll reveal a revolutionary technique that's reducing falls in the elderly by up to 60% that few medical professionals are sharing with their patients. Let's begin. Reason 1. The invisible deterioration of the vestibular system. The first, and perhaps most misunderstood reason why elderly people fall has to do with a system that many people haven't even heard of: the vestibular system. Located in the inner ear, this sophisticated mechanism is fundamental to our balance and spatial orientation, but it begins to deteriorate silently, decades before we notice any problem. Anthony, a 78-year-old former teacher, had always been active and healthy. One day, while walking down the hallway of his home, he felt the room momentarily tilt. He steadied himself against the wall. The dizziness passed, and he continued with his day. "I must have slept poorly," he thought. 3 weeks later, he suffered a serious fall that fractured his hip. What Anthony didn't know was that brief moment of disorientation was a critical sign that his vestibular system was failing. The otoliths, small calcium crystals in the inner ear that detect gravity and movement, had begun to degenerate. This degeneration doesn't happen overnight. It's a gradual process that typically begins around age 50. Studies show that by the time a person reaches 70, they may have lost up to 40% of the sensory cells in their vestibular system without experiencing obvious symptoms. The brain compensates for this loss for years, relying more on vision and proprioception, the sense of where your body is in space, to maintain balance. The problem arises when these compensations are no longer sufficient, or when another factor, such as poor lighting, a loose rug, or a moment of stress, interferes with these backup systems. That's when falls occur, seemingly out of nowhere. What are the early signs of this vestibular dysfunction that are often overlooked? Brief episodes of dizziness when changing positions, small stumbles when walking on uneven surfaces, a gradual tendency to walk close to walls or furniture, difficulty walking in darkness or with eyes closed, occasional feeling of floating when standing still. The good news is that once identified, this vestibular deterioration can be addressed with specific therapy. A vestibular physical therapist can design personalized exercises that retrain the brain and improve the function of the balance system. The key is early detection, long before the first serious fall occurs. Reason 2. Spontaneous fractures from silent osteoporosis. The second reason, perhaps the most alarming and least understood, is that many falls don't actually begin as falls at all. In many cases, especially in women over 70, what appears to be a fall resulting in fracture is actually the opposite, a spontaneous fracture that causes the fall. Carmen, 76, was simply walking through her kitchen when she felt a sharp pain in her hip, followed immediately by a fall. At the hospital, she was told she had fallen and fractured her hip. However, a more detailed analysis revealed the truth. The fracture had occurred first, causing the fall, not the other way around. This phenomenon, known as spontaneous fracture, occurs when bones become so fragile due to osteoporosis that they can break during normal activities, even without significant impact. The simple act of walking or turning can exert enough pressure to fracture a severely osteoporotic bone. Most alarming is that osteoporosis is known as the silent disease because it progresses without symptoms until the first fracture occurs. Many people don't know they have it until it's already severe. According to the International Osteoporosis Foundation, 1 in 3 women and 1 in 5 men over 50 will suffer an osteoporosis-related fracture in their lifetime. Bone density begins to gradually decrease after age 35, but this process dramatically accelerates in women after menopause due to decreased estrogen. By the time a woman reaches 80, she may have lost up to 30 to 40% of her bone mass. But did you know that osteoporosis is not an inevitable and irreversible process of aging? Contrary to popular belief, in many cases, bone loss can be stopped and even partially reversed with the right interventions. Key factors for preventing and reversing osteoporosis include adequate intake of calcium and vitamin D. Older adults need 1,200 milligrams of calcium and 800 to 1,000 international units of vitamin D daily. However, a recent study showed that more than 70% of older people don't reach these levels. Resistance and weight-bearing exercise. Research from the University of Sydney has shown that specific resistance exercises can increase bone mineral density by up to 3 to 5% in just 12 months, even in people in their 80s. Specific supplements, in addition to calcium and vitamin D, other nutrients such as magnesium, vitamin K2, and adequate protein are essential for bone formation. Vitamin K2 in particular helps direct calcium toward the bones and away from the arteries. Reduction of risk factors. Excessive alcohol consumption, smoking, and certain medications such as corticosteroids can dramatically accelerate bone loss. Medications when necessary. For more advanced cases, medications such as bisphosphonates, selective estrogen receptor modulators, or hormone replacement therapy may be necessary. Dr. Maria Gonzalez, a bone metabolism specialist, explains, most people believe that osteoporosis is simply part of aging, but science clearly shows us that it's a treatable metabolic condition. With the right approach, we can not only prevent fractures, but actually rebuild bone, even at an advanced age. An innovative study from the University of Nebraska Medical Center demonstrated that women between 65 and 85 years with established osteoporosis were able to increase their bone density by an average of 8.6% in the spine and 2.6% in the hip over 3 years, using a comprehensive protocol that combined nutrition, exercise, and specific supplementation. Reason 3, the dangerous and hidden interaction of medications. The third reason why elderly people fall goes far beyond the individual side effects of medications that both doctors and pharmacists warn about. What is rarely discussed is the cumulative effect when multiple medications interact with each other, creating an invisible cocktail that dramatically affects balance and coordination. Maria, 81, was taking 5 different medications, one for blood pressure, another for cholesterol, a mild antidepressant, an anti-inflammatory for arthritis, and an occasional sleeping pill. Each medication had been prescribed by a different doctor, and in individual appointments, she had been told that each one was safe and shouldn't cause problems. What no one explained to her was that, together, these medications created an interaction that severely affected her blood pressure when she stood up, orthostatic hypotension, slowed her reaction time, and caused intermittent periods of mild confusion. 3 factors that, combined, increased her risk of falls by more than 300%. A recent study from the University of Michigan found that nearly 40% of older adults take at least 5 different medications, and more than 60% of them have never had a complete review of how these medications interact with each other. Another alarming finding: for each additional medication beyond 4, the risk of falls increases by approximately 14%. The medications that most commonly contribute to these dangerous interactions are blood pressure medications, especially when taken at night, antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications, sleep medications, even over-the-counter ones, pain medications, particularly opioids, some common antihistamines, certain diabetes medications that can cause low blood sugar. What makes this problem particularly insidious is that the effects may not be immediate or consistent. A person can take the same combination of medications for months without problems until one day, perhaps due to dehydration, stress, or a change in diet, the interaction intensifies and a fall occurs. The solution begins with a comprehensive review known as medication reconciliation, ideally performed by a geriatrician or pharmacist specializing in older adults. This professional can identify dangerous combinations, suggest safer alternatives, or adjust dosing schedules to minimize interactions, especially concerning are certain medications that can worsen osteoporosis, thus increasing the risk of spontaneous fractures. These include some corticosteroids, anticonvulsants, proton pump inhibitors, and certain diabetes medications. If you're taking any of these, it's crucial to discuss strategies to protect your bone health with your doctor. If you're watching this video and finding this information valuable, I invite you to take a moment to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. Your support helps us continue researching and sharing information that can literally save lives. Also, please like this video so we can reach more people who need this crucial information that many doctors simply don't have time to explain thoroughly. Thank you for your support, and let's continue with our analysis. Reason 4, the vicious cycle of fear of falling. The fourth reason that significantly contributes to falls in the elderly is paradoxical, the fear of falling itself. What few people understand is how this fear creates a vicious cycle that alters the body's natural biomechanics, creating movement patterns that ironically increase the risk of falls. After a stumble or minor fall, Manuel, 76, began to feel anxiety whenever he needed to move around his house. This subtle fear caused changes in his way of walking, shorter steps, more rigid posture, and a tendency to not completely lift his feet from the floor. He also began to constantly look at the ground while walking. He was being more careful, explains his daughter, but 6 months later, he had the most serious fall of his life. It didn't seem to make sense. He was being so cautious. What Manuel's family didn't understand is that these cautious changes were actually worsening his balance. Studies have shown that the gait pattern adapted due to fear, known as cautious gait, significantly reduces dynamic stability and the ability to respond to unexpected losses of balance. When we walk normally, our body makes small automatic adjustments to maintain balance. This system works best when it moves fluidly and confidently. Fear disrupts this natural process, causing the person to tense muscles that should be relaxed during walking, reduce the natural swing of the arms that helps with balance, decrease weight transfer from one side to the other, reduce the ability to react to unforeseen obstacles, alter their visual field by constantly looking at the ground. Researchers at Boston University have documented that people with a high fear of falling are up to 40% more likely to suffer a serious fall in the next 12 months compared to individuals with similar physical capabilities but without that fear. This vicious cycle intensifies because after each fall, fear increases, gait patterns become more rigid, and the risk grows exponentially. It's a cycle that can lead the person to isolation, reduced physical activity, and accelerated deterioration. Breaking this cycle requires a dual approach, physical and psychological. The most effective rehabilitation programs include specific exercises to restore natural gait patterns, gradual exposure therapy to reduce anxiety, confidence training, and safe fall recovery, mindfulness techniques to reduce tension while walking, adapted home environment that reduces anxiety. Reason 5, the hidden neuromuscular disconnection. The sixth reason, and perhaps the most technically complex, why elderly people fall has to do with a phenomenon known as neuromuscular disconnection. This silent process occurs at the microscopic level and is completely invisible until it suddenly manifests in a serious fall. Every time we move, our brain sends electrical signals through our nerves to the muscles, ordering them to contract. This communication occurs through small connections called neuromuscular junctions. With age, these connections begin to deteriorate and, in some cases, disappear completely. Isabel, an 83-year-old widow, noticed that occasionally her right leg would momentarily give way when climbing stairs. She felt no pain or dizziness. Simply for an instant, the leg would not respond to her order to move. Her doctor told her she was probably just tired. 6 weeks later, that same momentary failure caused a fall that resulted in a wrist fracture. What Isabel's doctor didn't recognize were the classic symptoms of neuromuscular disconnection, a phenomenon that affects up to 40% of people over 75. Unlike visible muscle loss, sarcopenia, this condition affects the quality and precision of muscle contractions, not necessarily their strength. Recent research by neurologists at Stanford University has identified 3 stages of this disconnection: intermittency stage, occasional and brief failures in muscle activation, usually during complex movements such as climbing stairs or getting up from a chair; compensation stage. The brain begins to send stronger signals and recruit additional muscles to perform simple movements, causing premature fatigue. Deterioration stage. The connections degrade significantly, resulting in notable delays between the intention to move and the actual muscle action. The subtle signs of this problem are easily overlooked or wrongly attributed to general weakness. The good news is that recent studies have shown that this disconnection can be slowed and even partially reversed with the right type of exercise. Conclusion: a new perspective for prevention. Throughout this video, we've explored 7 fundamental reasons why elderly people fall. Beyond the simplistic explanations that are usually offered, the invisible deterioration of the vestibular system, spontaneous fractures from silent osteoporosis, the dangerous and hidden interaction of medications, the vicious cycle of fear of falling, advanced strategies for reversing osteoporosis, the hidden neuromuscular disconnection, the surprising relationship between vitamin D, muscle function, and osteoporosis. Understanding these underlying causes gives us a new perspective on how we can address this serious problem that affects millions of older people each year. The good news is that, armed with this knowledge, we can implement prevention strategies much more effective than simply being careful or installing support bars, although these are also important. The most successful fall prevention programs adopt a multifaceted approach that addresses not only the physical environment, but also these underlying physiological, medical, and perceptual factors. Some key elements of these programs include specific vestibular assessment and rehabilitation, comprehensive protocols to reverse osteoporosis, not just manage it, complete medication review, with emphasis on deprescribing when appropriate interventions to reduce fear of falling while improving actual balance. Specific exercises that focus on neuromuscular reconnection, optimization of vitamin D levels and other essential nutrients, home risk assessments that go beyond obvious hazards. As Dr. Elizabeth Barnes, a pioneer in fall prevention, said, "Falls are not an inevitable part of aging. They are the result of specific and modifiable processes that, once understood, can be systematically addressed." Our goal shouldn't be simply to prevent the next fall, but to restore the confidence, independence, and quality of life that fear of falling has stolen from so many older adults. If you or a loved one is at risk of falls, don't accept simplistic explanations or partial solutions. Seek health professionals who understand the complexity of this problem and are willing to investigate all potential causes. With the right approach, many older adults can regain confidence in their mobility and continue living active, independent lives. Thank you for watching this video. If you found this information valuable, please like it and share it with someone who could benefit from it. Remember to subscribe to our channel for more content that seeks to demystify important aspects of aging and promote a better quality of life for older adults. Leave us a comment telling us about your experience with this topic or any questions you may have. Until the next video.